Okay, just a little slightly disorganized blues to get us rolling here. So I'm just going to do a short live lesson today, just talking about, well, I have a topic and then I'm going to take some questions. So the topic is just ways to get from chord to chord in the blues. So specifically how to get from the 1 to the 4, how to get from the 4 back to the 1, how to get from the 5 back to the 1, which is why I was just playing a little bit to just get a few of those ideas out there. But this is also just kind of a test. I've been having some trouble with the streaming, so today maybe it'll work and I'll be able to take some questions from folks as well. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on the stream over here and also just on the video. So looking at some questions here. This is basically for everyone in the fingerstyle 5, but I left it open so that if you're just on the channel and you want to watch along, you can too. So here we go with some questions. And don't worry, you're not late. We just started. Hi, David. If you're answering questions, here's one for you. What makes a good melody when improvising? Are there some basic rules other than focusing on chord tones that you could share with us? Great question. And oh, hey, just going to say some hellos here. Great to see Bruce Burns, Ben Kolstad, Cliff Swanson. Nice to see you guys. Blue Max, Charlie, Lefteris, Juan. Hey, everybody. Hey, David Friel. Good to see you. Okay, let's see. Here's one from Rafal. I wonder if I have to follow song structure, chord progression, strictly when improvising. Is it okay to just down one chord and play some licks and then go back to the progression? Also a good question. Let's see. Man, we got the international crowd here. We got Rafal, I think. Rafal, it's Poland, I think, right? And then Lefteris from Greece and Juan from Spain. Oh, Bruce, you're getting an echo. Okay, well, this is a test, so let me know if anybody else is getting the echo too. Scotland. I didn't realize that's where you were, David. All right. Yeah, again, it's partly a test, so let me know if anybody else is getting that echo. Let me know. Krishna, would love to see more turnaround licks. Those seem to be key to getting right and maximum bang for the buck. Absolutely. Oh, good. I'm glad I got that right, Rafal. I know there were a couple of you there were at least two folks from Poland in this round. And I thought I remembered you were one of them. Oh, good. Okay. People say they're not getting an echo. All right. Well, let me talk a little bit about these things I was going to mention, and then I'll get into some of the questions. We're not going to go super long today, just making sure everything's working. But here are a few quick ideas for making the chord changes, and then I'll get into some of these questions. And feel free to keep posting questions as I go. Like I said, I'll try to get to like the first half a dozen of them if I can. When I think about melody, I think about the way the melody is going to land, the way it's going to resolve into the next bar or into the next chord. So, right, there's like a really typical kickoff, and you can hear that, you know, you can hear, think of that as like a Buddy Guy kind of lick. Right, but it works for fingerstyle and that kind of sound, and for and a 1. And then here, right, and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, right? So it's leading someplace. So you can think the same way about the chords. Instead of just sitting on E for 4 beats, what's going to take you over to the A chord? Something like that, right? The sound of the 7th resolving to the 3rd of the A, using this voicing, which is like the sort of classic Delta blues D7, but slid up 2 frets, right? So, and what's nice about this is you got, this is very slick. In classical music, they call this contrary motion, right? This wants to go down, this wants to go up. So it's super strong. So, and you can do it again in the end of bar 4 to get to bar 5. Walking up with these Freddie Green chord voicings. Here, I'm just playing the 6th string, 3rd string, and 1st string. And then at the end, I'm grabbing the 7th on the 3rd fret of the B string. So that's a real favorite way to get over from 1 to 4. And the idea is just to emphasize like the 7th-y quality of the E chord, because 7th chords want to resolve, and in this case, this E chord wants to resolve to A. So another way to do it is from here. So to use this voicing, just kind of keeping an eye on the feed here, and I'll get to some of these questions in a second. But if we can work our way up to this voicing, we've got the 5th in the bass, and then the 3rd is over here on the 4th string, and the flat 7's here on the 3rd string. And that can resolve down to A a couple of ways. The easiest way is just these 2 notes come down, and you use the open A string. So like that. Now you could also precede it. That's starting to get jazzier, but you could basically precede this E7 chord with a B minor 7 chord with the root, the flat 7, and the flat 3rd. So, right, so you get this kind of suspended sound. It gets resolved, and you're going over like that. And one other way you can do it is to do the dreaded tritone substitution. Right, so go from a B minor 7 chord to a B flat 7 chord and down to an A7 chord. So that's a cool thing too. So that's a few ways to get from 1 to 4. Getting from 4 back to 1 also has a few sort of typical things you can do that sound nice. The classic one is to go from 4 to sharp 4 diminished. So just taking an A7 chord and then going here. And so ways you can do it, you know, and this voicing or this voicing, or this one to get back up here. So if you're not offended by having the 5th in the bass, you can slide up from here with the here's the root and the diminished 7th and the flat 3rd or minor 3rd of the half step to become an E7. Back around to the 5. But another way to get from 4 to 1 that I really love is the sound of 4 major to 4 minor going back, which, I always thought of as like, oh, that's the Beatles 4 chord. But it's also like you hear it when swing era guys like Charlie Christian play it, If I just slowed down a little and breathed, it would sound a lot better. But so playing A7 and then playing A minor. So those ideas. A couple different ways to get from 1 back to 4. Another thing you can do that kind of plays off of that is to go from 4 to 4 minor, but you can think of it as this kind of minor chord, basically an A minor 6 chord with the 6th and then the flat 3rd and the 5th and the root. And that's nice because then you can also, if you're here, get that minor 6 sound, which is really nice. Which you can then resolve here, so that you get this sound. And you can go into this inversion of E with the G sharp and the bass. So this is, one of the things about this is, we've talked about these different voicings, these Freddie Green voicings. Here are some of the ways they actually get used, right? And you're sort of following around the things that you want to resolve and making the motion as sort of smooth and stepwise as possible. And if you can do this, then you can also think of it as you can change the root, but keep the other 2 notes and play D7. That's another way to get back from 4 to 1. And then someone mentioned turnaround. So I'm going to pause there because the last thing to talk about is ways to get from 5 back to 1. And that's kind of partly a way to talk about turnarounds. So I'll just show a couple now, and then I'll save the rest of that for when we do talk about turnarounds. But basically, on the most fundamental level, the blues turnaround is going to go from 5 to 4 to 1. But the swing turnaround tends to go from 2 to 5 to 1. It uses it, like in this case, it would be an F sharp minor chord to B7. So you can work with that. And then you can also turn that into a F sharp 7 chord. Because the F sharp is the 5 of B7, and that takes you back around to 1. And it's nice because you can start to put blues licks on top of that. And it gives you all these cool altered sounds on top. So that's a nice sound. And then finally, one of my favorite moves is one that I think of as the Ray Bryant turnaround, where he precedes the F sharp with its 5 chord, which is the C sharp chord. So he'll be on the 5. So C sharp 7, F sharp, B7. there's so many variations and different ways to get into that C sharp chord. Right, that's a much more modern, jazzy way to do it. 1, 2, 3, 6. And finally, if you're going here, F sharp to B7 and then to 1, you could also do a tritone substitution here. And in place of the B7, you could swap in F and then go down. So you could have many possibilities. So that's just some specific things about how to get from chord to chord within the 12-bar progression. So now let me take a look at the feed, which has been piling up, and try to get to some of these. So give me a second just to look at this, which means looking over here, not over here, but let me see if I can do it this way. Okay, I'm looking at the camera. Okay, so just back up at the top, and okay, and I'm actually going to scroll backwards. Oh, hey, Anton Emery. How's it going? And hi, Johnny Farragher. Great to see you guys. Okay. Any tips on playing sweeter, more major 7th, and trying to keep the bluesy feel? Excellent question. And from Darko, there's one video where I'm playing Little Red Rooster with Sam Swank. Could I play it, please, now or in your next video? Oh, yeah, maybe I'll do that at the end. Go out on that. Telmo, where can I see these improv lessons? They're in the membership. I can talk about that a little bit at the end too. Ruben, otherwise known as Ukulele Dojo. I posted this on the improv lesson. If I hear a piece of music in a random place, I would say that's David Hamburger. Is there something you do that is conscious about it? No, but I'll get to that. Could I explain the progression for the Freddie Green chord round that you did on the improv video? I'm not sure which Freddie Green one that is. Okay, let me go back to the top. There's about a half a dozen questions here. It's perfect. So I'll try to get to some of these, and just let me know if the sound is still cool and if everything else is still working, and I will keep talking about how to play the guitar. Okay, I'll start at the top from Brian. What makes a good melody when improvising? Okay, so I had this counterpoint teacher in college who asked us one day, what makes a good melody? And he let us talk for like 20 minutes before finally someone said, well, it depends if, and he was like, aha. We were like, aha, what do you mean? He was like, it depends. And we were all like, it depends, but what makes a good, how did you phrase this exactly? Basic rules other than focusing on chord tones. Yeah, okay. I mentioned something about this already just now, but to me, the thing about a good melody, there are many things, but a few important things you can keep in mind are having a sense of direction, not being afraid of repetition, and thinking of ways that the melody can lead you into the next chord rather than reacting to the chord you're on. Now, there are times when it makes sense to play after the chord, but the first example I gave of is a really good example of a melody that leads into the downbeat of the next measure. And you can sort of categorize these things. Like, I think of this as a short resolution into the downbeat, as opposed to there's a longer resolution into the downbeat, right? Right. So something short. Now, I just repeated it, but you can then, once you arrive, you can extend it, right? Now, if you go two different places at the end, you've now got two phrases. One that goes up and one goes down. And then now it doesn't sound like you're repeating yourself. It sounds like you're saying something. You can also think in terms of the way you answer yourself. Right, now that's one lick that's leading you into the A chord. Oh, sorry, one lick leading you into the E chord. And then the A chord lick isn't so much playing on the A as it is just basically saying, well, we're on our way back to the E chord. Right, so again, more repetition, but this same lick is carrying through the E chord and then landing. So the things that, to me, I want to not feel like I'm being chased around the room by the chords. I don't want to react to the chords. I want to express the sense that I'm taking the listener to the next chord. And that's a really big difference as far as your approach. Within that value or that idea, you could be thinking about, I really think direction matters a lot. I mean, I'm just playing blues licks here. I'm playing blues. And then when I'm on the one chord, I'm resolving to the major third. Okay, I'm using the sixth too. But I'm using really simple materials. Now that's right on the downbeat, right? So let's see if it still works. See, but now the answer brings you back to the one. So downbeat. Now I'm not spelling out the A chord. I'm just playing the E blues lick. I'm not even landing on the major third when I get there, but the momentum of that phrasing is going to take you where you're going. So thinking in terms of direction, thinking in terms of repetition and ways you can vary the repetition, and then just thinking in terms of resolving or landing in the next bar are just some real fundamental ideas you can start to work with. So I hope that gives you a start on that. We could talk about this all day, and I would be happy to, but I'm going to answer a couple other questions. What was next? Okay, so Rafal, this was a really good question, and I think you posted this somewhere too. I wonder if I have to follow song structure, that is, the chord progression, strictly when improvising. Is it okay to just stay on one chord and play some licks and then go back to the progression? I guess it depends. It depends. It depends if you're thinking more like a solo performer in a pretty open environment, like someone like Lightnin' Hopkins, who, the notorious quote from, I think, Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top was like, he played the 13.5 bar blues, and lightning changes when lightning wants to change, was the thing everybody who played with him said about him. It doesn't really matter if you're playing by yourself. When you're playing with other people, it matters a lot more. My vote would be, if you're going to just hang on a chord, do it intentionally. If you're playing a blues and you're coming back from the turnaround, make a thing out of it. If you're going to vamp on one chord, do it with intention. My thing is always like the thing with leading into the next chord. My notion of sort of creating a positive listening experience is that it feels like it was done on purpose. Times when I was in charge of a band and someone said, well, what do we wear to the gig? I'm like, I don't care what you wear. Just look like you put it on purpose. Just don't, whatever you wear, look like you wore it on purpose, not like that's what you happen to roll out of the house in. And it's the same thing with questions like this. I'm like, if you want to play more abstractly or just sit on a chord, that's awesome. Just make it sound like you did it on purpose, not like you forgot the chord progression, which I don't think is what you're talking about. But, anything's possible, and it's your creative choice, right? But given that question, I'd say, well, if I'm trying to play over the changes and really make it sound like I'm improvising over the chords, then my vote is to really play over the chords to the extent that I can. And if I'm going to break the form, to do it on purpose. And we've talked a bit in the fingerstyle 5 about creating a B section or creating a shout chorus or how find the parts of the tune where it's open season. Like the introduction, you can do what you want. It's not the tune. If you're going to create a B section, like when we were doing Baby Please Don't Go, and it's an 8-bar tune, and I was like, well, for my version of this, I made up a new chord progression for the B section. And so, if you want to have an open section or a vamp, put it in there on purpose. But just be clear what you're going for, and be clear that you are, if you are going to play loose with the chord progression, do it on purpose is my suggestion. It's my vote. And then if you're going to open things up, do that on purpose. I hope that answers the question. Let's see, what's next? Krishna, would love to see more turnaround licks. Those seem to be key to getting right and maximum bang for the buck. Okay, sure. How about some turnaround licks? Turnaround licks are fun. The turnaround, there are a couple of different places the turnaround comes from. The Delta blues kind of turnaround involves this kind of descending line. And it's usually a combination of a moving line and a constant line. So that and that's like Robert Johnson 101, although he would have done it in A. Right? But anyway, I digress. All the variations on this start with this basic idea, chromatically descending from the flat 7 through the 6 and the flat 6 to the 5 of whatever chord you're on, whatever key you're in, which in this case is E. And then getting the root against it, in this case the open high string. And in the case of the Delta blues or the Robert Johnson sound, it's kind of a triplety feel, which sometimes is literally triplets and sometimes kind of mixed up. Now, the variations on that can include harmonizing this descending line with this descending line. So 4th fret on the 3rd string, and just going down like this. And that's, I think of as like sort of the Muddy Waters thing, because he would play it this way, going down, and then you can kick off the high string. So you're doing a pinch with the 5th and the 3rd string. But you can also, you'll hear it sometimes on those early Muddy Waters records, going up, which is cool too, right? And then, so then you can start to look at other places you can get those notes, right? Like what is this? This is the 7th, I said, right? So you could have the 7th over here, and then the harmony note on the 3rd string, you could put, now it's underneath the 7th, though. So if you can see those notes, it's the 4th fret on the 3rd string and the 3rd fret on the 2nd string, and then the high string. And then you can put the high string on, playing the major 3rd. And this is, you can then bring this down. You can use it or not. Do all kinds of rhythmic things, breaking up the chord into little pieces. could reverse it. So that's some possibilities. And then, so that's one sort of school of thought. And then the other is the more sort of jazz-based idea of going through a cycle of chords like this and all the many permutations on it. And I touched on this a little bit before, but the basic idea is it's all based off the idea of dominant chords resolving and everything being the 5 chord of something else. So when you're working backwards, you think, well, okay, this is the chord that I'm going to end up on, E. This B7 is the 5 of E. So that's why that works. This F sharp is the 5 of B. If you were in the key of B, this would be the 5 chord, F sharp. And then if you were in the key of F sharp, C sharp would be the 5 of F sharp. So that's why you can go C sharp, F sharp, B7. Right? And then nothing says you can't combine them, right? So that's where all that stuff comes from. And within that, there are variations. You could land a half step above each chord and come in. So D7, C sharp, G7, F sharp, C7, B, F, E. And any combination of including or not including any of those. So you can start to come up with a lot of different combinations and then start thinking about what you're going to put on top of that. Right now I'm just kind of using the high string as a common tone. But just using this bluesy note on top. There's a bunch of different possibilities there. Okay, I hope that addresses at least some of that. Let's go on. Oh, it's already 5 o'clock. Okay, well, I said I'd do 6 questions. I think I've done 3 so far. Let's see. Looks like, knock on wood, everything is still streaming okay. Okay, Bruce, can I explain the progression in the Freddie Green chord turnaround? Okay, did you post later what you were talking about? Because I asked which lesson. I'm not sure which one is that. Okay, I'm going to come back to that one. Okay, I do want to answer that, Bruce, so I just want to clarify what that is. Okay, let me, I didn't mean to be sarcastic about that question, Ruben, because I see you followed up with more about that. It's not that it's random. This was Ruben's question about, like, what is it that I'm doing that makes it sound like me, which is a little hard to answer because I'm not really, it's one of those not for me to say kind of things. But I've had to think about this from having to explain certain things that I'm doing. And so I've had to kind of break down what it is. Because for most things, I mean, everybody, like, everybody learns by, well, I learned this thing from this guy and I learned this thing from this player. And, so I know how to play this and I know how to play that because I learned these things. And if I break down those sources, I'm like, okay, well, I learned a lot about ragtime and playing more than just 1, 4, and 5 out of the Richard Saslow book, Art of Ragtime Guitar. And I learned a lot about putting blues licks over moving bass lines from listening to Stefan Grossman and John Renbourn. And I learned about like that kind of snap to the bass and the ragtime things from Roy Bookbinder, and about other things about arranging and things like that from picking apart things that Dave Van Ronk had done. So that's like some of the basic DNA. But I also know that there are things that I do that I wouldn't have thought I had, things that someone said, well, you're doing this thing. what is that thing? And I have to go, well, what, a lot of it is like the rhythmic connective tissue. I think those are the parts that I unconsciously came up with to connect together the things that I like and to give things the rhythmic feel that I like. So a lot of these things that I've talked about, like, this sort of raking thing of that comes from, I can source that too. That comes from learning this thing from Duke Robillard that he had done to sound like a piano player. He did it with the picks. It's kind of hard to do with your fingers. But that idea of just like percussive nonsense that does something cool rhythmically. So there's that snap. And so it's there's some rhythmic things going on, and then there's some harmonic things that come from liking jazz, and in particular jazz pianists, and the kind of chord motion that you get on the blues when jazz players play the blues, and the kind of linear things that they do on the blues, like the way Charlie Christian plays blues licks, which is really different from how someone like B.B. King or Freddie King plays blues licks. So it's a combination of that kind of swing and hard bop phrasing of the blues, and all the fingerstyle technique from all the second generation Gary Davis disciple kind of people like Van Ronk and Jorma and Roy and those kind of people, and Ry Cooder, even though he's not a Gary Davis guy, and then some of the jazz harmonies and the jazz phrasing. It's really those two things. It's really like the collision of the jazz I like to listen to and the fingerstyle that I can actually execute. That's kind of it. And then whatever kind of like rhythmic stuff that I've had to figure out how to do to make it work. A lot of it is faking it. There's a whole lesson. I think it's even called Faking the Fourth String. But this whole thing of like that the fourth string isn't always there. So it's this kind of way of keeping the motion going. And it comes out of like trying to do this and just cover for whatever happens when you go up the neck and suddenly you don't have bass notes anymore. So that's kind of some of the elements of it, I think. Again, like it feels incredibly vain to sit and try to dissect what I do. But there's some answers. Okay. I hope that answers the question. And again, like this is just like kind of this is a very super casual Q&A. So just answering stuff and testing the platform, and we'll do a more formal Q&A in a couple of days for the membership. Yes, this will be archived, Anton. And okay, I feel like I missed a couple more questions here. Okay, this is sort of related to the last question. This is from Freezone about my right hand damping. And so when I try it, my hand is uncomfortable and my thumb is at the wrong angle. Was it purposely learned or did it come naturally? Someone just asked me about this the other day. A friend of mine who's been playing forever but hadn't learned about fingerpicking until recently. And I learned to do this because I started playing with a thumb pick after I'd been playing for maybe 4 or 5 years, because I was learning to play slide from a musician named Stedman Hinckley, and he played with the thumb pick. So I started playing with a thumb pick too. And the thumb pick, you're picking with the pointy part, right? So you have to hold your hand like flat on the strings. almost no way to avoid damping and having this sideways angle. You know, and I eventually decided I didn't really dig it, and that I like sort of the warmer sound of the bare fingers. Right? But that is what got my hand at that angle. And, you know, it's comfortable for me. I mean, part of what makes it comfortable is this is a smaller body guitar. Like I haven't played on a Dreadnought in like 20 years, basically since I got this guitar. And the smaller bout makes it more comfortable to me to play. I don't like reaching around all that stuff. Like if I play a Jumbo or a Dreadnought, it just feels like I'm playing a cello. It's ridiculous. So that may be part of it. It's also, I guess, like the angle I hold the guitar, I tend to keep it really flat or even almost dip down a little bit, and that may affect it. Like I can't play with a strap and have the guitar up here. It feels super weird. So it's partly the angle of the guitar. You never want to do something that's uncomfortable. So I'm always at a bit of a loss to try to explain what to do beyond just saying, like, you rest your hand here, you put it where the strings meet the bridge, and then you slide back and forth until you find the optimal amount of volume and thump, right? So like, this is too much, obviously. This is not quite enough, so you're just kind of moving back and forth until you find that sweet spot. But as far as the angle, it was only learned in the sense that I learned it by playing with a thumb pick, and that got my thumb in this position. When I see someone who's learning fingerpicking at the beginning, a lot of times when I was teaching privately, people would come in and they played like this, you know. And the first thing I would do is say, okay, rest your fingers, ring finger, middle finger, index finger on the top three strings. Put your thumb here, and then just go like this, right? I'm looking at the screen just so I can make sure I'm doing it right. But, you know, you want it like this, because this, they're going to bump into each other. You can't get any power. This, you're going to go across each other, and you get, your hand is in a much more, get a lot more strength. That's kind of how your hand is. To me, it feels like that's how your hand is meant to grip, right? So that's what works to me. Okay, I'm just curious. Did everything just kind of drop out? Intermittent freeze. Yeah, I was afraid of that. Okay, hopefully it's back now, but it looks like I am getting some dropout, which is no good. Yeah, I see it now. Lots of dropout. Okay, well, that's good to know. We'll see if it gets back. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second. Is it still, let me know if it's still doing it, because I can see that it's dropping. This doesn't look so good. Okay, I may call it if it doesn't get any better in a few minutes. Yeah. Ah, it's totally frozen. Okay. Wow, this sucks. Oh, now it's back. All right. Well, let me wrap these last couple questions, and I'm not sure when it started dropping out. It seems stable now. So I'll just keep my fingers crossed. Really? Okay. Well, yeah, man, okay. Yeah, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. Okay. Well, let's bag it. That is, and I didn't get to everything, but got to a bunch. So, okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, it doesn't look great at the moment. So, it's back. The quality's better. Oh, hey, Active Melody. How you doing? It's an honor to have you here. Brian, that's right. All right, well, gosh. Let me know if it freezes up again. I'll just try to finish. There was one more question I was going to try to get to. Someone asked about my guitar, which I should just post about. But Jim Ford, just purchased some of your TrueFire videos. Thank you. Glad you're enjoying it. Oh, Bruce, did I answer I think you answered my question when you discussed the 5 to 5 turnaround a few minutes ago. I've done something similar to this and sitting on top of the world, which I now understand. Great. Okay. Can I talk about right-hand technique? Noticed some fingerstyle guitarists come down at more of a 45-degree angle. Some come in from behind almost parallel. Yeah, I think I kind of just talked about that. Yeah, it just depends how, if you want like more of that sort of open arpeggiated sound or more of that damped sound. And it's really, to me, I just want the distinction between the bass and the melody. And I'm thinking of it as sort of more of a groove thing. I don't really want an arpeggiated sound, right? To me, that makes the melody and the bass kind of blur together, and it all feels just like kind of a wash. I mean, if I'm going to play... I'm trying to get that distinction between the melody and the bass rather than getting it to be all together. So I'm doing whatever I can to get that. And so the technique is really driven by the desire to get that separation between the bass and the melody. And okay, just gonna look for a couple more things here. Okay, Krishna. You had a question about idle moments. Yeah. I think, okay. Fingerstyle solo version of Idle Moments. Would love to see more of those. Yeah, I got on a jag of doing a few standards. I did Idle Moments, which is more of a jazz thing than a standard. And then I did Sweet Georgia Brown and All of Me and a couple other things. And yeah, there is this copyright issue, which is it's blurry when it comes to YouTube, but it's very clear when it comes to like the lessons that I put on the membership. So I've got like pieces of the puzzle worked out, but I think I did do a lesson where I broke down Idle Moments. I'm not sure. But that would be a pretty big thing to go through right now. So I think I'll hold on to that one for the moment. But let's see. Okay. I think there were a couple more questions here at the end. Joel Gurvitz. Yes, Brownie McGee and Van Ron. Yeah. I didn't find the Brownie McGee book by Happy Trom until I'd already learned to play, but still got a lot out of it. The Brownie McGee book, Guitar Style of Brownie McGee by Happy Trom, is a great book. And Happy told me some great stories about hanging out with Brownie McGee. So that was, wish I'd gotten to see Brownie McGee live. Okay, the last one, this is not a technique question, but it's a question about the guitar. It's a 00 size, which was, so Martin made the dreadnought makes. And then there's the triple O, the double O, and the single O. And the double O is kind of in the middle. It's it's shaped kind of like an OM, which is a really popular size. But the OM has the scale length of a dreadnought, and the double O has a short scale. It's like almost an inch shorter than a dreadnought. And that, to me, gives the strings a much springier feel. And that's what I really like. As far as finding one, which someone asked about, that was Telmo asking, a reasonable guitar for starting learning fingerstyle blues. I mean, you can learn on anything. You don't need a particular kind of guitar. But I would say you want to find something comfortable. And I don't know. I mean, reasonable is different to everybody. But around the house, we have a 0015, which my wife got many years ago. I'm the one who plays it a lot right now. But it's the same size. It's like the 0015s that they made in the 1950s and 60s were all mahogany. And so they were a little less expensive because they didn't have a spruce top. And some of them didn't have a glossy finish. And so they reissued the 0015s about 10 years ago. And they're still, a nice guitar, and they're not super cheap, but they're less than $1,000, which in the world of guitar, is sort of reasonable. But a lot of companies now make what they call parlor guitars, and they're really small. And I think that you can find, I haven't actually looked specifically, but I think Alvarez and some companies like that make some less expensive, smaller body guitars. But here's a tip also: if you have a dreadnought and it's hard to play, just tune it down a whole step, and then everything will feel slinkier and springier and easier to play. And that's the thing about a dreadnought that makes me crazy. It just feels really stiff to me. And I learned on a dreadnought. But tune it down a whole step, and you can even tune it down a whole step and then capo it if you're playing along with stuff and looking at stuff on the internet like this or anything else. But tuning it down will make the strings more relaxed and slinkier. So, are we still live? I guess we are. So anyway, so that's, sorry, I thought we were cut off here. Anyway, so so that would be my advice as far as just kind of tweaking what you've got to make it work. So that's it. I'll play a little blues just to get out of here. Thanks for being here today. It mostly worked. So, thanks for being guinea pigs. I'll archive this, and then hopefully this weekend we can do the live Q&A specifically for Sitting on Top of the World. Here we go. Okay, have a great afternoon. That was that. See you next time.